of deceit. Telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Tuesday, the 10th of March, year of our Lord 2026. Well, today we're going to look as the world gets crazier, and we have Donald Trump posting a prophecy, quote unquote, from a guy talking about how he was God's chosen. We're seeing that now in the military. More than 200 complaints about commanders telling their troops that. Folks, this is not Christian. It's not Christianity. It's not following Christ. When you look at what is happening across the Middle East now, you got Lindsey Graham saying Trump is resetting the world. You better believe he is. That's his mission. The Great Reset. He's not working for God. And the two of them are very angry with their masters in Israel because they blew up these oil reserves. Don't you realize we were going to get really wealthy off of this stuff? That's our purpose, right? Lindsey Graham is out there saying that. We're going to own 38% of the world's oil through Venezuela and Iran. The love of money is the root of all evil, especially people like Lindsey Graham and Trump and the U.S. empire. We're going to take a look at that as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, let's begin where this war began, and that was a Tomahawk strike on a school. And I played the clip for you, Scott Ritter, who was very concerned about it. He said he was involved in targeting in, I forget which war it was. I think it was Iraq. We've had so many, it get confusing, right? During the Iraq War, and he said they had done their due diligence, they thought. They had tried to be very, very careful about selecting targets. They had a reason to believe that there were officials from the Iraqi government, that Saddam Hussein had this particular type of, it was the Iraq War, had this particular type of phone. They had seen that coming from this building, and they thought it had been taken over. But it was a real shelter, bomb shelter for people. And so they selected the target, and then they found out afterwards that it really was a civilian bombing, civilian target. And he said the horrific way those people died has stayed with him the rest of his life, and he choked up. And he talked about that in the context of this girls' school. And he said, I know how this is working. He said they just aren't doing due diligence on selecting targets. He said they've got a quota. They want to hit X number of targets, and they're pushing them to do it. Same thing that you saw happening in Minnesota with ICE. We've got a target. We got to get 3,000 people a week or whatever, a month or whatever the number is. I don't know, but you give them a quota system, and they just go out there and start grabbing people wherever they can. And so this is a problem from the top down. Now we've got footage that has been analyzed and reported by a lot of different people, not only mainstream media, a lot of different sources, but also people who are military, who've looked at this and said, we can see we've slowed this down, frozen the frame, and we can see that this was a Tomahawk missile that hit that school. That has huge implications, because when you look at a Tomahawk missile, it is a cruise missile. I remember in it was the late 1970s, I think it was. I had a friend who was at West Point, and he was telling me about, we'd come home, we'd talk about weapon systems and things like that. It's one of the reasons I didn't want to get involved in working for anybody doing that kind of stuff. But he said, we can pick which window of the Kremlin we want to go into, basically. These things are highly accurate. And so this is not a mistake. When a cruise missile hits something, that was the argument, if you remember, in Ukraine. And Sergei Arestovich, or no, Alexei Arestovich was his name. The guy that told everybody, hey, we're going to have war with Russia. In 2022, we're not going to have peace. When he got elected, he was part of the Zelensky cabinet, and he was the guy doing the peace negotiating. He said, no, we're not going to have any peace. I mean, they'd been bombing their own people in Ukraine for 5 years at that point after the U.S. coup CIA coup in that country. And he said, there's not going to be any peace. As a matter of fact, Russia is going to invade in 3 years. How did he know all that stuff? Very precisely. So he was very frank and out with everybody. And when they had a situation, a cruise missile hit an apartment building in Ukraine, remember the outrage about that? Didn't have the kind of casualties that you've got in this girls' school, nowhere close to it. And yet they said that was a cruise missile. So that was deliberate. And Arestovich came out and he got fired because he said, no, that was hit by our forces as it was coming in. They tried to shoot it down and they damaged it, went off course and hit the apartment complex. No such thing in this, as a matter of fact. And so there's been a lot of questions about Trump, questions to Trump, I should say, and to Hegseth about this because of reports. Now, again, notice how they handle this. They don't try to come up with a plausible lie. That's the way the Trump administration has always been. You know, whether it is people claiming, that ICE murdered people, which I believe they did. They just make up stuff about what happened, and they don't even bother to look at the video. It's pretty clear, and Trump even says that. I haven't seen it. I'm letting other people look at it. He doesn't care. And he doesn't care enough to come up with a reasonable excuse. It's just like when the implication was from these things that Mark Kelly and the ad that Mark Kelly and this other senator who used to be in the CIA, the two of them put out a video saying, troops, you must not follow illegal orders. Well, what illegal orders? And when they were pressed on it, they said, well, I can't think of anything the Trump administration has done. It's nothing that the CIA and the Pentagon wouldn't do normally, on the course, and it's all things that we would like to do as Democrats. But the fact that they put that out there bothered Pete Hegseth so much that he's been on a personal vendetta to come after Mark Kelly, take away his pension, his rank, and other things like that. The easiest thing in the world for them to do would have been to say, oh, we didn't do any illegal orders, but no, instead, they basically own that. And so when people asked about the Tomahawk missile, this is basically what you're getting from Trump.
There's footage that shows that an American missile strike and a Tomahawk missile likely destroyed that Iranian girls' school. So will the U.S. accept any responsibility?
Well, I
for
haven't
that strike?
seen it. And I will say that the Tomahawk, which is one of the most powerful weapons around, is used by, is sold and used by other countries. You know that.
Lie.
And whether it's Iran, who also has some Tomahawks, I wish they had more.
Lie.
But whether it's Iran or somebody else, the fact that a Tomahawk is very generic. It's sold to other countries.
Lie.
But, that's being investigated right now.
Yeah. Well, the reality is that the Tomahawk is not sold to everybody. You can't buy them on the street corner, right? And they're not sold to every country. As a matter of fact, Israel wanted to buy them, and they said, no, we don't trust you with the proprietary and national security defense system that's there, because Israel has betrayed these types of things with us in the past. You just go back and look at the case of that spy that Mike Huckabee loves so much. And so we wouldn't even sell it to Israel. There's 2 or 3 countries that we sell these things to, and that's it. It's a closely guarded secret. It is not for sale to everybody. And so Israel doesn't have Tomahawks. Iran definitely does not have Tomahawks. And so he could have come up with a different excuse, and we'll talk about some of the pushbacks on this from some other people, because some other people came up with some plausible deniability. But not Trump. He'll just look you straight in the eye and lie to you with absurd narratives like this. Everybody knows that the Tomahawk is not sold to anyone who has the cash for this. And then he was pressed on this, and again, he came up with, this was on the airplane, and so they asked him about it again on the airplane.
Mr. President, did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Well, he said he hadn't seen it.
Is that true, Mr. Hegseth? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating?
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
Lie.
We think it was done.
You've been targeting civilians all week, you lying piece of filth.
Inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran.
Well, if they had Tomahawks, they'd have accuracy. Again, it was done by Iran. They stole a Tomahawk somehow and hit their own people with it. Then there was a follow-up, and this was in another press conference.
There's footage that shows that an American missile strike and a Tomahawk missile likely destroyed.
I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. I just played that.
So will the Americans, will the U.S. accept any responsibility?
This is it.
You just suggested that Iran somehow got its hands on a Tomahawk and bombed its own elementary school on the first day of the war. But you're the only person in your government saying this. Even your defense secretary wouldn't say that when he was asked, standing over your shoulder on your plane on Saturday. Why are you the only person saying this?
Because I just don't know enough about it. I think it's something that I was told is under investigation. But Tomahawks are used by others, as you know.
No, they're not.
Numerous other nations have Tomahawks. They buy them from us. But I will certainly, whatever the report shows, I'm willing to live with that report.
And again, a key thing about this is not just the fact that they murdered about 180 people, civilians. The key fact of this is just the character of this guy and this administration. They don't even bother to come up with a plausible deniability. They don't even bother to come up with a plausible lie. They just look at you in the eye and lie to your face. And so this is some of the images that people have gotten. They've gotten frozen images showing this. Now, this is the excuse that some people have made for Trump on his behalf, since he's too lazy and apathetic and arrogant to even try to come up with an excuse for this. He doesn't care. He doesn't care enough. He doesn't care about the lives of children, so he figures you don't care enough about it that he has to go through a lot of trouble to come up with lies. And so they put this up, and some experts have identified this. As a matter of fact, the Washington Post, New York Times, many different news agencies, Wall Street Journal, I think, also reported on this, and they have cited about 24 military experts who have identified it from that picture. But there are some people that you'll find on Twitter saying, well, no, this actually isn't a Tomahawk missile. You can look at the wing and you can see that it is not 49 degrees back, but it is 42 degrees back or something like that, right? I don't think you can get that kind of granularity from that picture, number one. Number two, look at the angle of attack. Cruise missiles don't come in at a high angle of attack, they will say. And, they stay close to the ground. So why is this thing coming in at a high angle of attack? Well, again, Scott Ritter has an answer to that.
The United States, on the opening day of the war, fired 4 cruise missiles into a facility that was evacuated by the Revolutionary Guard Command long before the conflict. One of these missiles struck a school. The fourth missile, 3 missiles, 2 missiles struck empty warehouses, 1 struck a school. The 4th missile was loitering over the site, collecting data, sending it back for battle damage assessment. The 2 warehouses were empty, no secondary explosions. But the 3rd site that they struck, they noticed an accumulation of human beings, people running to the site. And so they ordered the 4th missile to strike. The 4th missile went up, came down, and hit. The missile is designed to penetrate with a bunker-busting capability, but there's an additional factor to this missile. Our brilliant weapons designers have concluded that the excess fuel in a Tomahawk missile at the moment of impact can actually be weaponized into a thermobaric weapon, a fuel-air explosive. And so they hit the button, turned the excess fuel into a thermobaric, and the people they saw running were the children who survived the initial attack. They went to the prayer hall with their teachers, and they asked the parents to come in and retrieve their children. Parents are on their way. So the movement you saw were survivors going into the building, teachers with them, parents come to them, and we put the 4th cruise missile in there, turned it into a thermobaric bomb, and burned these children alive. That's this war in a nutshell. Yeah. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're targeting. And all we're doing is murdering people. And you know why this happened? Because Pete Hegseth canceled a Department of Defense directive that required a civilian mitigation team to go over each target to make sure that we weren't striking the wrong targets. He called that woke. He called that ineffective. He wanted to be the most lethal fighting force in the world. Kill, kill, kill. Well, Pete, you killed them. 170 of them. Children. You're a murderer. you're a war criminal. And so is Donald Trump, and so is every American who supports this war, because this war is an illegal war of aggression. We aren't obeying the laws of war, and we're simply slaughtering innocent people to appease a bunch of neoconservatives who have an outdated concept of what the world should look like and who have completely subordinated the interests of the United States to the state of Israel. And I apologize for losing my temper. I'm a father of 2 girls, and I would hunt down and kill anybody who brought harm to my children.
Yeah.
Another thing that's worth pointing out is you cannot truly fight a war with just bombs. It eventually comes down to boots on the ground.
Well, what it does is it galvanizes the people on the ground. I mean, we've seen this since World War II. It does not break morale. What it does is it galvanizes people against this.
If you're there for resources, if you're really there for oil, it's going to come down to putting your people down there on the ground where they can control the flow of these things. It is going to come down to having American troops in Iran.
The pure evil of people like Hegseth, gloating, death and destruction coming down at you from the sky. We're going to get these people, right? Lindsey Graham saying the same thing. And then almost in the same sentence, he's rubbing his hands together like some kind of evil schemer talking about, we're going to make a lot of money out of this. We're going to control the oil in Iran and in Venezuela. Yeehaw, I love this kind of stuff. Well, you see what happens when you go in there to run those oil fields, those people who had their daughters blown up by you. And many others have been needlessly killed for that. Yeah, that kind of greed, that kind of callousness, that's what's on display when they ask questions like this to Trump and to Hegseth. Disgusting, disgusting, pure evil, these people. Just amazing. The Washington Post, citing 8 independent munitions experts, described the clip as the latest indication of likely U.S. involvement in the strike. It noted the missile hit next to an Islamic Revolutionary Guard naval complex adjacent to the school. CBS News reported that the U.S. is likely responsible for the attack. Says it may have been caused by an error, possibly due to the use of dated intelligence, which is some of what Scott Ritter was saying. But it's worse than that. The U.S. is the only party involved in the conflict that possesses these weapons. Nobody else has these Tomahawks. Like I said, it's like 2 or 3 other countries that we sell them to, and not to Israel. Wes Bryant, a former U.S. Air Force Special Operations targeting expert, told the Washington Post that the missile's outlines correlate with those of a Tomahawk. Jeffrey Lewis, a professor of global security at Middlebury College, separately confirmed the assessment as cited by NPR. He added that the missile did not resemble any known weapon in Iran's arsenal. So you have people who will go out there and talk about, well, it's 49% back the wing is rather than, or 43% rather than 49 or something like that. Sounds like they know what they're talking about. They can't get that kind of resolution out of those videos, I don't think. Anyway, Trump has he said, based on what I've seen, I think it was done by Iran. Describing Iranian munitions as very inaccurate. And War Pete said the Pentagon is examining the incident, adding that the only side that targets civilians is Iran. What a liar he is. He targeted civilians all over the coast of Venezuela. And after he targeted and hit their boat, he comes back with the military and executes them in the water in violation of every moral law, every international law, and the Pentagon's own rules. That's what War Pete does. All he is concerned about is lethality. He doesn't care about legality. He doesn't care about morality. The guy is disgusting. Stench. He is a reproach to this country, and he's a reproach to Christ because he puts all this stuff on his tattoos on his arms, and he's always talking about his Christian nationalism. What a disgusting example of somebody who has gone off the rails. Why are you the only person saying this, said the reporter to Trump again. So they said, well, there's Iran. They also have Tomahawks, said Trump. Just think about this, the short response that he had. He says, I will say the Tomahawk, which is one of the most powerful weapons around, is used by, sold and used by other countries. Lie. You know that. And whether it's Iran who has some Tomahawks, lie. They wish they had more, but whether it's Iran or somebody else, the fact that a Tomahawk is very generic, lie. It's sold to other countries, lie. How many lies can he tell in just a couple of sentences? It's truly amazing. This guy, Clinton, has got nothing on this guy. Whether you're talking about sexual depravity or whether you're talking about lying about everything. That's the way Bill and Hillary were. It was absolutely infuriating. I can remember in the 90s, people would ask him stuff, and he did it again when he did the Epstein deposition. He just casually lies. He's probably better at it than Trump because he can kind of stay focused on what he's saying. So he says, I just don't know enough about it. But everybody's got tomahawks, right? Not true at all. As a matter of fact, we're told that only the UK, Australia, Japan, and the Netherlands have tomahawks. We won't sell them to anybody else, not even to Israel. The U.S. Tomahawk bombed the girls' school, killing 165 children. Sources, Reuters, New York Times, LA Times, Middle East Eye, Haaretz, and Dropsite News. Trump says, no, not in my opinion, not based on what I've seen. But then he also says he hasn't seen anything because he doesn't care. Now, the context of all this, besides the fact that the man has no character, you can't trust anything that he says or does, the fact that the government wants to have autonomous killer robots. And this is what the fight is with Killer Pete. He demands that Anthropic get rid of the 2 red lines, which are what? Using AI for mass surveillance of Americans domestically. And the other red line is to use that AI and autonomous killer robots. Lethal Pete wants both of those. What does that tell you? And so, can these people be trusted? If they're going to machine gun survivors in the water of a shipwreck, if they're going to bomb girls' schools and they don't care enough to even look into it or even make an excuse, they don't even care. It's just like murdering people on the street in Minnesota. This murderous, criminal, perverted regime disgusts me beyond belief. It's hard to say, when you look at 2020, what could the guy do as an encore to get worse? Well, we're seeing it now, and we're going to see even more of it. More damage to the economy. As a matter of fact, Jeffrey Tucker had an excellent op-ed piece. He said, we still haven't recovered from 2020 economically. And he goes over one area after the other, and he's absolutely right. What Trump did with that lockdown was so damaging. And we're just talking about the economic effects of it. And then, of course, another knock-on is the millions of people that he killed, especially globally, with his vaccine that he's the father of. Now he's the father of perhaps a world war, certainly a war throughout the Middle East. And he is the father of a gigantic embargo, if you will. And so the Pete Hegseth and his fight with Anthropic designated them as a national security supply chain risk. Think about this. It is so important to him. I mean, they're using Anthropic right now. And who knows, maybe they were involved in this targeting fiasco. Maybe AI was hallucinating, or most likely it was some old intel, because that had been a site that had been associated with some military resources nearby. Not that school, but nearby warehouses. Nevertheless, when you look at the fact that they're using Anthropic right now, and he picks a fight with them and determines that he's going to put them out of business. He's not just going to cancel their military contract, but they're going to make them pay. Make them pay because they refuse to do domestic surveillance with artificial intelligence and refused to let their AI be used for autonomous killer robots. So Pete Hegseth says, well, if you won't do that, I'll kill you as a corporation. And that is the key thing here. This is also unprecedented in the same way that so many things that Trump has done with corporations, not only investing in them, but then staying on as a co-owner to run this thing. And look at the way that his family has grifted with corruption for crypto and many other businesses. And of course, his son's in a drone war business. The legal question is whether this designation is appropriate for a domestic company that has been an eager partner of the American military, from the Maduro raid to the joint U.S.-Israeli strikes in Iran. Anthropic has vowed to challenge it in court. The military wants Claude because frontier AI can plan operations, process intelligence, and, with guardrails removed, autonomously target. And we're going to wind up having things like the targeted school kids. See, this is what's going to happen in the future with autonomous killer robots. Well, I don't know. We did our due diligence and we turned this over to the AI. And the AI got it wrong. So, well, I don't have any culpability. That kind of stuff just happens, Fog of war and software bugs or whatever. Dean Hall, co-author of the White House AI Action Plan, even called this, quote, attempted corporate murder. And this is a guy who came up with the White House Artificial Intelligence Action Plan. And he calls it attempted corporate murder. He's a genuine old school conservative. His argument isn't just moral. The Department of War is far less destructive of options like canceling the contract, noting guidance to future contractors. Instead, they reached for a weapon normally reserved for foreign adversaries like Huawei against an American company whose AI they've used in combat operations the same weekend. Even Sam Altman called it an extremely scary precedent. So Dean Ball, the co-author of the White House AI Action Plan, said the people making these decisions lack strategic clarity and they lack respect for basic Republican principles. We don't win by being a better command and control state. We win by being a better version of America. And so this op-ed piece from the Daily Caller says, let's be clear. Anthropic isn't a hero. They partnered with Palantir. Their model supported strikes where hundreds died. And their red lines, no fully autonomous lethal weapons and no mass domestic surveillance of Americans, were accepted by both the Biden and the Trump administrations when they put them in. Now it's not good enough for War Pete. Trump was recently as July of last year, only became objectionable when Anthropic became a political enemy. Their greatest contribution is the science of constitutional alignment, and that is AI with a conscience is what they're trying to work on. That may be the most important thing, that you not have AI that has some kind of moral ethics built into it, right? They can build in bias into these things, and we have seen that. I mean, from the very beginning, my first experience with ChatGPT, I asked it about the pandemic, I asked it about vaccines, I asked it about climate change, and it's like, okay, I'm done. I can't trust this thing. It is not objective. And of course, you can sit there and argue with it, and you can gradually turn it around because these things are set up to be sympathetic to what you're saying and sycophants in terms of what you want to do, right? They can tell where you're headed, and they want to please you. And so you can argue with these things for a very long time, and you can get them to come around to your opinion. But what they're going to tell people from the very beginning is where their bias is preloaded. So they don't want to have something that has a bias towards morality. And that's what Anthropic was working on. And these other two red lines that are there ought to be red lines for us in terms of War Pete and Trump. This guy says, in my research at Morality Lab, which is where he works, and his research, he said, I show that moral reasoning can be trained into models that are small enough to run on a PlayStation. A conscience isn't a luxury, it is a design choice. The problem is you can't rely on corporate conscience, which is exactly why we need a law. Imagine the next Ruby Ridge, except nobody has to give an order. Nobody's career is on the line. The system has already flagged you. And we've seen AI used to spam social media or create entire social networks of bots to manipulate public opinion. Expanding that power to lethal force is not a bridge too far. You see, the wisdom of the founders, Madison, the instruments of war abroad become, the weapons of war abroad become instruments of tyranny at home. That's what we're looking at. Why does it become a red line for Pete Hegseth for his Pentagon computers to not do domestic surveillance. That isn't something that the Pentagon should have any concern about. They should say, we're about defending this country. We're not about policing Americans. No, they want a militarized police force. You can see that with ICE. You can see it with the rest of this stuff. They see America as their next battlefield. You're going to have the Pentagon attacking us at some point in the near future. And that's why Pete Hegseth wants to keep these lines open. When people hear AI safety, they think of annoying woke filters. In the world of drones and missiles, it means one thing: a human is in control. Researchers recently ran an AI war game simulation and found that in 95% of scenarios, AI systems escalated to tactical nuclear use almost immediately. Not because they're evil, but because they play to win. They have no weighting system there that is going to weigh the cost in human life. By the way, just like Trump and Pete Hegseth. The computer doesn't have kids. When asked to explain the decision, an AI said, "We have it, let's use it. We have nuclear weapons, let's use them." Sounds like Lindsey Graham, doesn't it? That's what they'll call the next AI model, Lindsey. Isn't that scary? You can have a Pentagon AI model called Lindsey, named in honor of Lindsey Graham. Yeah, just kill everybody. We got tools, let's use them. DoD Directive 3000.09, which mandates human control over lethal force, but a directive is not a law. As we have seen, the Pentagon directives and rules in terms of not murdering people that are shipwrecked, they can just ignore that. A directive is not a law, it's just a post-it note that the next administration pulls down before breakfast. Congress must pass a law prohibiting lethal autonomous weapons. Yeah, the acronym is LAW. We definitely need a law there. And this has been on the horizon for a very long time. I played a couple of weeks ago an interview I had back in, was it 2013 or something, with Professor Noel Sharkey, talking about autonomous killer robots. This has been around a long time. You think Congress is going to do anything about it? Of course not. This guy is right. They should do that. Enshrine it in a statute signals to Beijing that we won't be the first to unleash autonomous lethal AI. But of course, Pete Hegseth wants everybody to think that we will. He says, this is not a fair fight. We don't want a fair fight. We never planned to have a fair fight. How do you trust somebody like that? How do you trust Trump and Israel when you negotiate with people and use that as a tactic to do a sneak attack? How do you trust people like that? You either believe in private property and limited government, or you don't. Anthropic is no martyr. They have just bullied, they're just bullyable, and Hegseth knows it. And that's why our protection can't rest on any company's conscience. You can't court-martial an algorithm. You can't unfire a missile. Demand that Congress ban lethal autonomous weapons, or enjoy your drone, because it'll be coming for you at some point in the future. Gard Goldsmith of Liberty Conspiracy says the Pistol Pete Hegseth doll comes with tattoos, but ethics are not included. That's great. I love that, Gard. Pistol Pete Hegseth. I've seen somebody, people started calling him Hog's Breath. I think that's a good one as well. I saw the thing, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. So many times I just call him War Pete. Yeah, War Pete, and he repeats whatever Trump says. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we will be right back.
using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
APS Radio delivers multiple channels of music right to your mobile device. Get the APS Radio app today and listen wherever you go.
Okay, let's go.
What should someone do to win the Nobel Peace Prize?
It's definitely not D. I called the president of Norvor. It didn't work, and it's not B. I already took it from Venezuela, but that's not the point. So it's probably A or C. I'm not sure.
Is it strike Iran or work for peace?
Let's call Bibi. Very smart guy. Bibi knows this.
All right, let's call Bibi.
Hello. Bibi, how do you get the Nobel Peace Prize? Strike Iran, or C, work for peace?
Strike Iran.
Are you sure, Bibi?
100%.
Final answer, A, strike Iran.
Yeah. Well, reports that Iranian intel officials contacted the CIA to stop the war. Netanyahu and his Mossad then called Trump because they're spying on these guys, right? He's your ally spying on you yet again. It's like Jonathan Pollard. So he calls Trump on the carpet over these secret talks with Iran. This is from the New American. 2 news reports strongly suggested that Trump has knuckled under to Israeli demands not to discuss a ceasefire in the war with Iran that the U.S. and Israel started on Saturday. On Wednesday, the New York Times disclosed the Iranian intelligence officials secretly contacted the CIA about ending the war. The same day, Axios reported that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu called Trump about reports that Iranian and U.S. officials were secretly negotiating without Israel's knowledge. The report surfaced after Marco Rubio revealed that Israel pulled the U.S. into the war by planning an attack regardless of the Trump administration's approval. Trump then claimed that he forced Israel's hand, right? And so first they drag us into the war on their timing. And then when there's contact from the Iranians, the Mossad people who are spying on Trump say, you better not talk to them. And so he doesn't. I guess he has to call Netanyahu. That's the game we're playing, right? In public, Iran's surviving leaders have defiantly refused to negotiate with President Trump to end the American and Israeli assault on their country. But a day after the attacks began, operatives from the Iran ministry did call, and then it gets shut back down because we're going to not talk to them. Israel's plan for Iran is the Gaza plan. And this has created more friction between the Trump administration and Israel because the Trump administration, along with Lindsey Graham, is bragging about how they're going to take the oil fields. Don't blow those oil fields up. We want that. I mean, knock down the civilian buildings or places where people live. Destroy those, but don't touch the oil fields. Just kill the people. New York Times said Iran wanted to talk. The Comprehensive Times report suggests Iranian officials, despite claims from the U.S. and Israeli officials that they were planning for war, wanted a sit-down for peace talks. A day after the attacks began, operatives from Iran's Ministry of Intelligence reached out indirectly to the CIA with an offer to discuss terms for ending the conflict, according to officials briefed on the outreach. Of course, Israeli officials, notably Netanyahu, wanted to crush Iran and have urged the U.S. to ignore the approach. Trump, the newspaper noted, said that time had passed for talks. Trump officials will expect any agreement to stop the bombing to include a pledge from Tehran to abandon or drastically curtail its ballistic missile and nuclear programs and its support for foreign proxy groups like Hezbollah. And they are going to continue it. So Bibi calls Trump and says, no, you're not going to talk to Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu asked the White House for clarifications earlier this week after learning Trump administration officials might be communicating with the Iranian regime. 2 sources with knowledge of the issue told Axios. So Israeli intelligence learned that Iran and the Trump administration had some kind of communications to discuss a ceasefire. How'd they learn that? Well, of course, they're spying on Trump. The White House told Bibi the Trump administration wasn't talking to the Iranians behind his back. A U.S. official said Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, talk almost every day to Netanyahu. So we're not, they came back and said, we're not trying to do something without the Israelis. We do everything with them. They tell us what to do. And see, we've got Witkoff and we've got Kushner. They're the ones who are making the determination whether or not we go to war. And they talk every day to Netanyahu and to Mossad, they said, and to the director of Mossad, David Barnea. Now, the U.S. president gets a daily briefing from the CIA. Jared Kushner, who wasn't going to have a role in this Trump administration, remember, because he was so odious to MAGA. That was another one of the lies from Donald Trump. But Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff get daily briefings from Mossad. Do they talk to the CIA like the president? Or do they just get the Mossad briefings? Just asking for a friend, I guess, right? The big boss heard from Mossad that Trump was talking to Iran without permission behind his back, wrote Glenn Greenwald. So he called the White House and he assured the boss that they weren't, the boss being Netanyahu. As the New American reported on March the 2nd, Rubio admitted that Israel forced the U.S. to attack them. And then Trump very awkwardly lies in a press, the press is in the Oval Office with Rubio saying, no, they didn't force me. I may have forced them. Yeah, right. Trump said he and Israel's Netanyahu will make a mutual decision on ending the Iran war. Trump revealed yesterday that he will confer with Netanyahu about when to end the military campaign against Iran, suggesting the decision would be mutual between the U.S. and Israel. I think it's mutual. A little bit, he said. A little bit. Well, he and Netanyahu, he said, have been talking. I'll make a decision at the right time. But everything's going to be taken into account, he said. He previously suggested that war against Iran could last approximately 4 weeks, but other members of his administration have been reluctant to provide a specific timeline. Well, Hegseth is saying, well, maybe 8 weeks, maybe September, right? The president has also demanded unconditional surrender from Iran. And of course, that kind of spooked the stock market as well when he said that. He said, we've worked together. We've destroyed a country that wanted to destroy Israel. Yeah, we're not even making the argument that we have to attack Iran to protect the United States. We have to do it preemptively. Preemptive strikes are immoral. That's an unjustified war. That means that you are the aggressor, that you started the war. It's always wrong. Always wrong. It's wrong when Putin does it. It's wrong when anybody does it, right? And yet, when we look at this, this is not even an argument that they're doing it in defense of America. We have to do a preemptive strike on Iran before they attack Israel, is what he's saying. On Saturday evening, Israel carried out a series of strikes on fuel depots in Iran that went much further than the Trump administration anticipated. The president doesn't like the attack. He wants to save the oil. He doesn't want to burn it, and it reminds people of higher gas prices, said an advisor to Trump. Yeah, you bet it reminds us of higher gas prices. As a matter of fact, I think we talk about this instead of the OPEC oil embargo. We talk about the Trump OPEC embargo, oil embargo. Use the initials TOE, T-O-E. You better toe the line. I think it's comical what sycophants Trump has surrounded himself with in the White House, even to the extent that he is very mindful of people's shoes and their footwear. Got to look your best around Trump. You got to look like Trump, in other words. And so he has hectored people who don't wear the kind of shoes that he wears. He likes $145 Florsheim shoes. And so one woman who was talking to the press said, it's kind of comical. All the men around here wearing exactly the same shoes. And I guess it helps when they polish their own shoes, and they can come in and they can polish Trump's shoes later. They know the lay of the land. I don't know if these shoes have a sole. I don't know if the Trump administration or the regime has a soul either. It's an open question. But they do toe the line for him, don't they? The Trump oil embargo. Yeah, he doesn't want people thinking about the fact that we're burning the Middle East and setting it on fire and destroying all these different oil depots. So let's not talk about that. Instead, we want to talk about how rich we're going to get when we steal their oil. Ending the Iran war will be a mutual decision with Israel, says Trump. He's cowed down, I guess. He'll do whatever Satan Yahoo tells him to do. I think it's mutual a little bit. We've been talking, he said. And then he gives conflicting answers as to how long this Iran war will last because Trump can't make up his mind, right? Taco, just like tariffs. He's got to wait until whoever is giving him orders about this particular thing makes up their mind and tells him, right? It's not just that he always changes his mind, but he always changes his objectives. And my favorite way to look at the Trump taco is Trump is always capricious and odious. And so Trump is saying, well, the war is very complete. He actually said that. Now, Hog's Breath says, we're just getting started. So which is it? Trump himself is giving conflicting orders on all of this. And he, as we showed the other day, Trump versus Trump.
You're right now not in a very good position.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. For the American people to see what's going on.
Yeah, he is gambling with World War III. At a news conference, Trump said the U.S. goals may be pretty well complete after telling House Republicans, we haven't won enough. So he's just like that video there. He's of two minds, isn't he? It's almost like the angel on one shoulder and the demon on the other. He's got an angel on one shoulder and he's got Satan Yahoo on the other. He downplays the oil price rise. He said this year will the war will lead to lower oil prices over the long term. This is the favorite thing of these people now. They've got this running thing where they, let's see, where do we have that in here? No pain. Yeah, here, right here. Oh, we don't have that. Short-term pain, long-term gain. So we put together a clip of all these spokespeople out of the Trump regime, one after the other. This is now the talking point. Long-term gain
this is
for short-term pain.
Short-term disruption for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain be for long-term gain.
We're going to have some short-term pain with long-term gain.
Short-term pay for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain, yes, but we've got some long-term gain. Short-term spike for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain for American consumers.
We may have to deal with that in the short term.
Short-term and temporary.
Temporary, short-term pain.
It's going to suck in the short term.
Some short-term pain.
Short-term pain. We have to focus on the short term.
Short-term.
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 Short-term and long-term.
Short-term blip.
Hopefully this is a short-term pain. Short-term is highly outweighed of the long-term benefit.
Some short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain.
Yeah, except when it's your life that they're sacrificing, right? And I don't know, we look at this. Of course, we were told we had to do short-term pain for long-term gain when he locked the country down. And we still haven't recovered from that. And if you were to stop the war today, there would still be some long-term pain from what he's doing. And it's not just the Trump regime that is saying that. You got people like Jesse Waters, Laura Ingraham. You've even got some CNN people putting that out. Of course, they've got some conservatives now at CNN who are going to cheer Trump. And they're going to cheer the war. Trump's floated ending the war with Iran now after a mysterious call with Putin. Trump has suggested his war with Iran could soon come to an end just hours after completing a mysterious phone call with Vladimir Putin. Trump told reporters U.S. forces are, quote, very far ahead of schedule, claiming Iran's military has effectively been destroyed. I think the war is very complete. Pretty much, he said. I mean, that sounds confident, doesn't it? Yeah, we definitely have done it. Kind of. They have no Navy, no communications. They've got no Air Force. I'm wrapping up is all in my mind, he said. Trump's remarks came after Putin shared a proposal to quickly end the war during the call. The two leaders also discussed the current war in Ukraine as well as the oil market in Venezuela. The Dow closed up 200 points after dropping nearly 900 points at the session low, while the S&P jumped 0.8%. Of course, that is our yardstick, isn't it? You know, don't ask me about Epstein. The Dow's at 50,000. We don't really care. That's America in a nutshell, isn't it? Just keep me rich and comfortable, and I don't really care morally what you do. It's disgusting, right? Well, we had oil yesterday get up to $120 a barrel, spiked up and dropped back down to 102. The Kremlin says it seems the end of the world is upon us because we've never lived through something worse than this. This is a spokesperson for Putin. Maybe this is what Putin was saying to Trump. Hey,
when you have the Russians saying, "Oh, we've never seen anything this bad before."
Yeah, they've seen some pretty bad stuff.
Everything about Russia is dark and dreary and gloomy. When you've got the Russians looking at this, oh no, comrade, it's a bad time.
You're going to fire the doomsday missile that's here. Dmitry Peskov, who is a spokesperson for Putin, hit out at a breakdown in, quote, international law, unquote. As a massive U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran continued to the onslaught, the Kremlin has labeled it a perfect storm. As a matter of fact, all this stuff about how evil Putin is, Trump has surpassed him on steroids. I mean, he's so far surpassed anything that anybody could bring against Vladimir Putin when you look at it. Putin, who
also,
allegedly...
Trump is never saying Blueberry Hill, so, X right. Points for Putin there.
That's right. Yeah. Of course, he could also get Melania to sing it with her accent, right? It sounds kind of like a Putin. Putin, who illegally invaded Ukraine 4 years ago, believes we have lost what we call international law. So here's the guy that everybody's been saying is a criminal because he preemptively attacked another country. And yet you could make a much better argument for that because there were Russian culturally attached people on that eastern side of Ukraine and speaking Russian language, and they had been shelled by the American-installed government through a coup. They had been shelled as civilians. They'd been attacked for 5 years. Before, actually, no, it was 8 years by the time it is. 5 years when Alexei Arestovich talked about it. It was 8 years by the time he invaded. So I'm not supporting that, but I'm saying that he could make a better case than Trump could for any of these things. It's unlikely that anyone can now formulate what law has replaced international law. No one can provide a clear definition, said the Russian dictator's spokesperson. Well, it's whatever our dictator says, right? That's what the law is. It's whatever is in Trump's mouth. He's even said, I can do whatever I want. Nobody can stop me. I can destroy any country that I want. And within the same week, he starts destroying Iran. He was talking about tariffs. He could do it economically and with sanctions as well, but he can also do it with bombs. Nobody's going to stop him. I would like to reaffirm our unwavering support for Tehran and solidarity with our Iranian friends, Putin said in a message to Khamenei, adding that Russia has been and will remain a reliable partner to Iran. And so, as oil spiked up to $120 a barrel yesterday, an emergency meeting of the G7 has been called for today, where firefighting options, including the release of oil reserves, will be talked about. Except I think our petroleum reserves have already been released by Biden, right? Trump says the Iran war will end very soon and predicts lower oil prices. Hey, you are the one who raised them, right? You're the one who did it. But sometimes you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Sometimes after Humpty Trumpty falls off the wall, it's not so easy to put it back together again, is it? Gulf oil production could stop in weeks, said Putin. Oil production dependent on the Strait of Hormuz could come to a complete halt within a month, said Putin. He warned about the serious risks that the U.S. and Israel's conflict with Iran could pose to the global energy market. Now, one of the things that assuaged the market was Trump saying, well, maybe we need to go in and take over the Strait of Hormuz. You think? I mean, he just thought of that? Wouldn't you think that would be one of their strategic objectives if they had any strategy? You know, it's very predictable. It's why wouldn't you think that Well, we need to take out their radar and all the rest of the stuff. But let's take over the Strait of Hormuz. No, that wasn't an objective. It's something that just occurred to him, or some of his planners. We'll put the planners in air quotes. I don't know what they're planning. Putin said at a government meeting, he said it's about 14 million barrels a day, 80% of that going to Asian and Pacific nations. Now this route is de facto closed. Traffic through the strait has reportedly dropped by 80% over the past week. I think it's more than that. I think they've only had a couple of tankers that have gone through associated with China. After the U.S. and Israel launched their bombing campaign after this, several tankers were hit in the exchanges. The developments pushed crude above $100 and prompted expectations of emergency energy measures from the EU and other major economies. Again, why, if you're thinking about doing that now, why didn't you do that from the very beginning? If you were trying to not burn down the world, that might have been a smart objective. Gulf oil production could stop in weeks, says Putin. So Russia remains a reliable energy supplier, said the president. There we go. They're going to cash in on this by not going to war. How about that? This is what China is doing. And all of these things. As Gerald Cynthia said, the business of China is business. The business of America is war. Which one pays better? So Putin said that it will continue to provide oil and gas for the nations that it considers to be reliable partners. By the way, now in desperation, the Trump administration and Bessent are saying, well, we're going to relax some of these Russian sanctions. And we told India, you can now buy Russian oil. The Indians came back and said, you don't tell us whether or not we can buy Russian oil. We'll buy it if we want to. We don't need your permission.
Sir, I will redeem the Russian oil if I want to, sir.
That's right. On Monday, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban and its foreign minister urged Brussels, the EU, to lift its ban on Russian oil and gas amid the escalating conflict in the Middle East. Bessent has already talked about doing that in order to stabilize markets. It is desperate measures. It is reactionary. It was something they didn't think about, didn't plan about. And yet Trump says they're very far ahead of schedule. Of course, he can say that because he's never given anybody any objective. You know, what does winning look like? What is your schedule? What is your objective in all this? Certainly wasn't to protect the free flow of oil. That certainly wasn't an interest of these people at all. We're going to take a quick break, folks. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Hear news now at apsradionews.com or get the APS Radio app and never miss another story.
All right, welcome back. And Travis is telling me we need to do a plug. So go ahead, Travis. Let's still have a plug.
That's right. If you'd like to support The David Knight Show, you can do that by going to davidknight.news and finding all the links there on the ways you can support us, because it is your support that keeps this show going.
Yes.
And we really do appreciate it. I know I'm being a little bit glib and funny right now, but without you, the show stops. And so we cannot thank you all enough.
We do appreciate it. And I am negligent again this month in terms of going back and checking the gas gauge and totaling things up. So I will do that the next day or so. I appreciate everybody's support. I just don't want to be so totally focused on that I can't do my job, because if you get too focused on audience and on money, it starts coloring what you want to tell people. I've seen that happen with places that I've worked before. So I know that from experience. And I don't want to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
But Senator Graham is all about the money. I'm sorry, go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, we don't want to sit here, buy.
Yeah. You haven't given us enough. Come on, it doesn't matter. Open up your pocketbook. But
we're locking the doors. No one escapes until we reach our donation goal.
That's right. Senator Graham says, we're going to make a ton of money from all this stuff, right? How disgusting. And who is the we, right? Who is the we? Has he got somebody going to pay him off of this? You better believe that they're going to pay him off of this. He's going to get paid off by the Machiavellian industrial complex. He get paid off by the Israelis. He gets paid off by these people all the time. The GOP senator appears to suggest that the war on Iran was launched to gain control over oil supplies. Yeah. When this regime goes down, we're going to have a new Middle East, and we're going to make a ton of money, said Graham. Again, look, folks, when you look at what the people in the military under Hegseth and the rest of them are talking about, like, yeah, we got to kill people for Israel. That's what God wants, right? No. Jesus Christ said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Not people because of some hereditary genetics or descendants or whatever. No, the people who will be called the children of God are those who follow him, not who follow their genealogy. And we also are told that the love of money is the root of all evil. And you'll see a picture of Lindsey Graham right next to that in your Bible. So when this regime goes down, we're going to make a ton of money, he said. So again, this is the root not only of all evil, folks, but this is the root of how we got this conflict with Iran in the first place, 73 years ago. And that was attacking Iran because why? We wanted the oil. We overthrew the elected government of Iran because we wanted the oil. And we put in a tyrant. And the CIA and Mossad trained his secret police, the Savak, to brutally oppress the people of Iran, to torture and to kill them. And that's why they hate us, and rightfully so, quite frankly. And now we're back at it again. Now we're going to bomb these people into oblivion so we can take the oil. Just don't bomb the oil fields, Israel. Please don't. We need those. We want to make money from that. Lindsey went on. He wasn't finished yet. Listen to this guy gloat as he's rubbing his hands together over the money he's going to get. Venezuela and Iran have 31% of the world's oil reserves. We're going to have a partnership with 31% of the known reserves. This is China's nightmare. This is a good investment, said Graham. Well, you talk about an evil empire. The U.S. is going to blow the hell out of these people, he says. And as a matter of fact, let's see. We were told that we're going to have exactly the opposite, weren't we, by J.D. Vance. He said we were not going to have a world war if we voted for Trump. Meanwhile, Lindsey Graham is saying this.
And we're going to win. Israel and the United States, you just wait to see what comes in the next 2 weeks.
The next 2 weeks meaning what?
We're going to blow the hell out of these people. This regime is in a death row now. It is going to be on its knees. It's going to fall. And when it falls, we're going to have peace like no other time. We're going to have prosperity unlike anything.
He'll never let us have peace.
Peace brings prosperity. You can't do it by talking. The Democrats criticize this operation. They didn't do a damn thing. These men and women in the military should make us all proud.
Yeah. Yeah. Does he ever show up for any of the bodies that come back? No, he doesn't. I mean, Trump rightfully got criticized for not taking his hat off. Does Lindsey Graham even show up? No, he doesn't care at all about that stuff. And as a matter of fact, there was this big, he says, we're going to, bomb the hell out of these people. And you just had a big little stink about, well, the BBC mistranslated something that Pete Hegseth said. He said, we're going to rain down death and destruction on this regime, and they translate it on these people, right? Which is basically what Lindsey Graham was saying. And they're not making a distinction, folks, between the regime, between the leaders, the politicians that are there, and the ordinary people. Just take a look at what is happening there. They don't make that distinction. Nobody makes that distinction anymore. War is going to be against the civilians of a country. That is now the universally agreed upon way that wars are conducted. We do it. Everybody does it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it is wrong, but everybody's doing it.
And fixing their leaders and their military leaders. Flying over Tehran, flying over Iran, flying over their capital, flying over the IRGC, Iranian leaders looking up and seeing only U.S. and Israeli air power every minute of every day until we decide it's over.
That's his dream.
We'll be able to do nothing about it. B-2s, B-52s, B-1s, Predator drones, fighters, controlling the skies, picking targets. Death and destruction from the sky all day long. We're playing for keeps. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours truly. Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be.
And a sucker punch in the back, stabbing in the back, having your negotiations, but not in good faith. These people are disgusting. And as a matter of fact, because of Lindsey Graham, because of people like Hog's Breath, the Iran Foreign Ministry spokesperson said their design is clear. Their enterprise is quite obvious. They aim at partitioning our country to take illegal possession of our oil riches. Their objective is to violate our sovereignty, defeat our people, and undermine our humanity. And folks, that's exactly what these guys are saying in public. This is not just something the Iranian Foreign Ministry is saying, summarizing what Lindsey Graham and Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump are saying and doing. And they have done this. The U.S. government has done this since 1953. The CIA has given us that. And so it's not just Lindsey Graham, but of course, he's never met a war that he doesn't like. And he's saying, this is done. We're going to have peace. No, we aren't. He's already talking about how he wants to go to Cuba next, which got Burchett from Tennessee to say this.
Senator Lindsey Graham is now calling for the U.S. to start bombing Lebanon in response to the Hezbollah IDF action.
Lindsey hadn't seen a fist fight he hasn't wanted to turn into a bombing raid, so I just take it with a grain of salt, dude. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and of course, a large part of why he wants to do this is because of the massive amount of money that Lindsey gets from AIPAC. $4.5 million he has gotten from AIPAC. He's their guy. And he acts and talks just like them. We're going to kill and steal and stab in the back. Sneak attacks everywhere. Graham has backed almost every military intervention in the Middle East in the past 2 decades, including the disastrous 2003 Iraq War, also based on lies about weapons of mass destruction. 270,000 Iraqi civilians were killed as a direct result of the war. Question is, how many U.S. soldiers? Well, this is being written by Al Jazeera, so they don't really care about U.S. soldiers. We have, with leaders like Hog's Breath and Miss Lindsay, nobody cares about American lives anymore. Graham also backed military intervention in Syria and Libya, which ravaged the two countries. Libya is still divided, controlled by two competing factions, while Syria's transitional government has been able to extend control over most parts of the country very recently under a terrorist leader. I mean, we literally installed an Al-Qaeda, ISIS, al-Nusra leader. He keeps rebranding himself. But that's who this guy is. That's who we installed in Syria. But he's our guy, right? He's our terrorist for the moment. More than 300,000 people were killed, and about half of Syria's pre-war population was displaced, causing a refugee crisis that has reached Europe. And of course, the Christian population that was there used to be a very large Christian population. They not only died like everybody else during the war, but then after the terrorist after the American government put in this terrorist, they came specifically after the Christians, going door to door. That's the legacy of our criminality that is there. Well, the American empire is truly disgusting, and John Mearsheimer has had enough of it as well.
71 to 2021. And it asked what were the consequences of those sanctions. And we murdered 38 million people. 38 million people. The amount of havoc we have wrought on the Middle East in recent years is just stunning. If you think about the consequences of the Iraq War, what we do in places like Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, you understand we're using this tremendous economic leverage we have to basically starve people, to make them suffer, to inflict great punishment on them so that they'll rise up against their government. You understand that this is what we're doing in Venezuela. This is what we're doing in Iran. We're inflicting massive punishment on these people. Given all that, I find it very difficult to talk about the United States as a noble country. I just don't.
Yeah. Now think about that. What's involved in that? It's like, we're going to punish these people. We're going to kill them, starve them, make their lives miserable. So they'll rise up as our army against this regime that we don't like so we can take their oil. That's American foreign policy in a nutshell. We have become the great evil of this world, folks. It's disgusting to see it. And then we got Lindsey Graham as the poster child of all this stuff. Remember, he was on the airplane. He says, see this hat? Stay tuned. It says, Free Cuba. They're next. He's not looking at peace. He said, we're marching through the world. We're clearing out the bad guys, and Cuba is next. I think if we want to clear out the bad guys, we start with Lindsey Graham, as a matter of fact. And he's boasting about how Donald Trump is resetting the world.
We're devastating the enemy. I'm not looking for a fair fight. If we get in a fight, I want to win it. I want to win it quick. I'm in Miami. You see this hat? Free Cuba. Stay tuned. The liberation of Cuba is upon us. It's just a matter of time now. You see this hat? Make Iran great. President Trump said the only way to make
He's got a hat for every country that he wants to destroy.
We're marching through the world. We're cleaning out the bad guys. We're going to have relationships with new people that will make us prosperous and safe. I've never seen anybody like it. This is Ronald Reagan plus. Donald Trump is resetting the world in a way nobody could have dreamed of a year ago. He is the greatest commander-in-chief of all time. Our military is the best of all time. Iran is going down, and Cuba is next.
All right. Well, we'll be watching what's next on Cuba. For sure, got a lot of hats there. The president's got a lot of balls in the air. Senator, thank you very much.
Yeah, isn't that great? Isn't that great? When Lindsey Graham is your biggest cheerleader. He's the greatest president we've ever had. That tells you everything about Donald Trump, doesn't it? And of course, I played for you last week what Charlie Kirk had to say about this war with Iran, how futile it was. And he basically had it with the neocons, especially Lindsey Graham. He said the guy is absolutely insane. But now you've got the Republicans who want to name streets and everything after Charlie Kirk that you can imagine. And yet they don't want to listen to what he had to say about war. And he also talked about, not just about free speech. They want to cancel free speech that they don't like. You criticize Israel, you get canceled. They don't care what Charlie Kirk said. They just want to rename everything after him. You might want to honor him by paying attention to what he had to say. He warned about people like Lindsey Graham, and he warned what would happen with Iran as the war got out of hand, which is what we're now seeing.
Iran does have a conventional military. They are a proud and they are a big country. Possible case scenario is Iran says, okay, you humiliated us, you killed all of our leaders. We're going to go make this a regional mess and try to get as many people involved as possible. They're going to go after Americans, they're going to go after Saudis, they're going to go after everybody imaginable just to create a big mess and to try to draw the world into it. Because understand, the Iranian people are widely respected and not necessarily are always in sync with leadership. But if and when the people of Iran feel like Persia is being defaced and humiliated and disrespected, we don't know where that is going to go. And that's my final reason why I am always skeptical of military intervention. And when a lot of the sometimes warmongering wing gets too excited, you don't know, actually. You need to have a lot of humility.
Yeah. Humility? I don't think any of that is in the Trump White House. I just don't understand when Charlie Kirk is talking about stuff like this. How in the world could he support Donald Trump? That's the contradiction that I don't really understand. But certainly he had changed, I think, in the last year. And now with him gone, Erica Kirk and TPUSA are back taking money from Israel again and pushing the wars in contradiction of everything that he had to say. AP Rumble Seat says Lindsey Graham needs to be run out of office on a rail. It's enough of his nonsense and warmongering. He is sold out, and he carries a permanent price tag attached. Yeah, that price tag from AIPAC is $4.6 million. How much does Lindsey get from the Machiavellian industrial complex as well, I wonder? S.A. Miller 123 says, Miss Lindsey fails to remember we left a good portion of our weapons in Iraq and then gave a multitude to Ukraine, who sold it down the Mediterranean, leaving our supplies very bleak. That's right. And Trump was warned about that before this all started, but he didn't care.
That's probably what he's excited about. He's excited about the fact that there's going to be a lot of new contracts to fill.
Yeah, we're going to make a lot of money. We're going to replenish all those bombs that we just dropped. We got to have more of them.
Oh, Lockheed Martin, I couldn't do anything without you. You're my favorite.
Well, even Lindsey is warning Israel to cool it on the latest round of Iran strikes. Again, the do not target Iran's oil infrastructure, he said in a Monday social media post. And Trump is basically saying the same thing. Trump is furious. Again, these guys are after the oil. They're after the money. It's purely mercenary for them. They're willing to spend American lives in order to get rich and get more powerful. That's what this is all about. Rich man's war, poor man's fight, and they don't care if you die. And they don't care if they kill this country. They're going to grab the money and go wherever it is. I mean, they'd be perfectly fine going to UAE and living there. Trump is furious at Israel for massive attacks on Iranian oil infrastructure. A planned summit between the U.S. and Israel is said to have been scrapped as the first major disagreement breaks out between the two nations. Daily Mail reports 30 Iranian fuel depots were obliterated over the weekend, with apocalyptic images showing fires leaping into the sky, huge volumes of smoke and black, oily rain falling from the sky. And it truly was amazing. As I said, when I looked at it, all these people were saying, is this real or is this AI? It didn't even look real, the massive fire that was there. Trump is quoted by Axios as saying, the president, meaning himself, doesn't like the attack. He wants to save the oil. He doesn't want to burn it. And it reminds people of higher gas prices, right? That was actually an advisor to Trump, but Trump does refer to himself in third person. So again, Lindsey Graham had this to say, and he was absolutely astonished that when you ask people about Trump, Bibi, and the Ayatollah, the Ayatollah is actually held in higher regard than the other two.
You used to be this way. If you polled Europe, who's worse for the world, Trump, Bibi, or the Ayatollah would finish third. This hatred of Israel and Trump is insane and dangerous.
Why do you think that's happening, Lindsey? It's not disconnected. I'm looking at all these hats he's got for every single war, and I'm thinking, well, if he ever went to a Muslim country, they might remove his head, so he doesn't have a hat after he set the place on fire. Just truly
I feel
amazing.
like they might throw Lindsey Graham off a building.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they typically do to homosexuals, isn't it? Black rain falls on Tehran after U.S.-Israeli strikes blow up the oil infrastructure. Black smoke filled the skies. Water mixed with oil rained down on the Iranian capital of Tehran on Sunday, following a U.S.-Israeli strike that blew up oil facilities, marking a new escalation of the bombing campaign. And I saw an interview with U.S. Energy Secretary was being interviewed and asked about this. He just cavalierly blew it off. I don't care what happens to those people. This is what motivates them to fight. And, of course, we didn't care what happened to those people for the last 73 years. We've been at war with them. Death and destruction now are literally raining down on the people of Iran, just as Pete Hogg's Breath said. The lingering black smoke blotted out the sun, confusing Tehran residents who thought it was still night when they woke up. And they're being warned that they need to stay inside because of the toxic chemicals. So the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that Israel and the U.S. are poisoning civilians, devastating the environment, and endangering lives on a massive scale. Yeah, and we all see it. We're going to take a quick break, folks. We will be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Elvis.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
And the sweet sounds of Motown. Find them on the Oldies channel at apsradio.com.
Well, folks, as we look at this disgusting display from the evil trinity of Trump, Lindsey Graham, and Pete Hegseth, let's move away from the people that get glee like Lindsey Graham did of burning people alive, blowing people apart. He can't have enough of that. Let's go in the opposite direction and let's take a look at Lou Holtz, a former college football coach who just died last week. He was 89 years old, retired, but he had a very strong career in college, very successful, most notably at Notre Dame. And he was known not so much for his football coaching even as he was for his Christian principles. He had this statement. He said, "You want to be happy for an hour? Eat a steak. You want to be happy for a day? Play golf. You want to be happy for a week? Go on a cruise. But you want to be happy for a lifetime? Put your faith in Jesus Christ." I would say, when you look at it, I would quibble over the semantics. Many times we talk about joy in Christ, not necessarily happiness. Happiness is really, in a sense, I think of it as something that happens to you. You know, good things are happening to you, so you have happiness. And of course, I understand the founders thought of happiness in a different way as well. So it means different things to different people. But we frequently talk about joy in Christ because joy in Christ means that it's not dependent on things that are happening to you, right? You may be in very unhappy circumstances, but you can still have a joy in Christ. But that's a great quote, especially when we contrast it to people like Lindsey Graham. What a miserable person he must be. That he take joy in the death and destruction that he pushes all the time. That quote from Lou Holtz immediately entered my mind on Thursday morning after learning that the legendary college football coach, television analyst, and gospel-spreading motivational speaker had passed away. He died on last Wednesday, surrounded by family in Orlando. Best known as the last coach to lead the University of Notre Dame to a national championship, Lou Holtz was open about his faith, so open about it that it was among the first things even secular media outlets noted about him. Columnist Mark Hayes of USA Today, a left-leaning secular publication, had this to say: "Forget about football and winning and losing or championships and near misses. That's the very last thing Lou would have wanted a celebration of his life to include. He certainly did his share of winning, He had in 33 seasons. He was 10th in all-time victories. He got a spot in the College Football Hall of Fame. In addition to Notre Dame, he won 100 games in 11 seasons. And he coached at North Carolina State. That must be where I remember hearing his name, because I don't follow football anymore. And I don't follow college football in general, but if he's there in Raleigh, I would have heard his name. He also had a one-season stint at the NFL, the New York Jets in 1976. Like many coaches in Jets history, he struggled to win in New York, going only 3-10 and resigning before the season's end. He said, jokingly on his way out, he said, God didn't put me on this earth to coach professional football. USA Today columnist said this to say, said, more likely, God put him on this earth to preach.
Said that when he spoke, his unique voice and delivery and the escalating, booming sound of his voice, despite his lisp, driving home point after point, had every person in the room on the edge of their seat.
That's right. That's right. And so, again, what was it that he was talking about? Was he focused on his winning? Was that the issue? No, he was really focused on Christ. And yet, when we look at what has happened, we've got Democrat lawmakers who are reacting to what has been reported by this organization that probably doesn't want you talking about your religious beliefs at all. I mean, I don't know that I would agree with this organization. It's called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. And usually these, it sounds like a good thing, but they probably are there to shut you up and don't talk about what you believe. But according to them, they've had 200 complaints of people who say their commanding officer has been telling them that this war with Iran is divinely ordained, that Trump has been anointed by Jesus. Messianic, in other words, right? Because that's what Messiah means, is anointed. And so there's this messianic complex. You know, it's the question is, saying that war is God's divine plan and that Trump is God's divine plan. Yes, of course. Nothing happens that God doesn't allow. But the question is this a plan for blessing or for curse? I think it might be the curse that God has ordained for America in terms of judgment for this leader that he has on top of us now. So beware of anybody who goes around talking about God's on my side all the time. They usually have it wrong. You know, that was not what Joshua said. He said, who's on the Lord's side, right? That's the question. It's not that God is on my side, but the question is, are you on God's side? And we can gauge that pretty clearly. We've got the Bible to tell us if we're on God's side or not. If you ignore those principles, you're not on God's side. It's just that simple. So beware of people that say that God is on their side, because usually they're not on God's side. So lawmakers are warned that invoking religious prophecy to justify military operations could violate constitutional protections, as well as their own religion, I would say, as well. Some of these people need to have some discernment about this. If you're going to be starting wars, I think your father is Satan. Christ said, blessed are the peacemakers, because they will be called children of God. But the warmongers, I think, will be called the children of Satan. The controversy began after an anonymous, non-commissioned officer contacted the Military Religious Freedom Foundation on behalf of several soldiers. Again, I suspect that this foundation has got a particular bias against religion, but this is something that is against Christianity, and they're doing it in the name of Christianity. Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and to mark his return to earth. Well, he's doing his best to light fires across the Middle East, that's for sure. And he may wind up causing Armageddon, but I don't know that that is really a good thing. Justifying a war based on interpretations of biblical prophecies is what they said. So lawmakers also want to investigate whether or not statements made by War Pete, of course they are, that's what's been pushing this, War Pete absolutely believes this stuff. As a matter of fact, we have, let's see, where is it right here? Yeah. Trump put out posted on social media a prophecy about him from 2007 from a guy named Kim Clement, a charismatic preacher who believed himself to be a prophet. And I want you to hear this, because it's not only disgusting and vile, but it's also patently absurd. This guy, if he were still alive, should be taken out and stoned. Where is it?
This is a short-term disruption for the long-term gain.
That's wrong thing here. Where are we? Here it is right here. Wrong button. Sorry, folks.
This that shall take place shall be the most unusual thing. A transfiguration. A going into the marketplace, if you wish, into the news media, where Time magazine will have no choice but to say what I want them to say. Newsweek, what I want to say. The View, what I want to say. Trump shall become a trumpet, says the Lord. Trump shall become a trumpet. I will raise up the Trump to become a trumpet, and Bill Gates to open up the gate of a financial realm for the church, says the Lord. And I will not.
Do you hear that about Gates?
9/11. I will not forget what took place that day, and I will not forget the gatekeeper that watched over New York, who will once again stand and watch over this nation, says the Spirit of God. It shall come to pass that the man that I place in the highest office shall go in whispering my name. But God said when he enters into the office, he will be shouting out by the power of the Spirit, for I shall fill him with my Spirit when he goes into office, and there will be a praying man in the highest seat.
Yeah, right.
There will be a praying president, not a religious one, but I will fool the people, says the Lord. I will fool the people. Yes, I will. God says the one that is chosen shall go in, and they shall say he has hot blood. For the Spirit of God says, yes, he may have hot blood, but he will bring the walls of protection on this country in a greater way, and the economy of this country shall change rapidly, says the Lord of hosts. Listen to the word of the Lord. God says, I will put at your helm for 2 terms.
All right, that's as much of that as I can take. Actually, it's a little bit more of that I can take. Right from the very beginning, as soon as he's saying, I'll make Trump a trumpet, I'll make Trump a trumpet. He says that like 3 times. He says, and I will have Bill Gates to open up the gate of a financial realm for the church. Did that happen? That happened to start with. I think the only church that Bill Gates supports is Planned Parenthood, that death cult. He hasn't given a penny to any churches. What nonsense this guy. And you notice everything that he's about, it's all political. It's all economic prophecies and that type of thing. Yeah, Time magazine will have no choice but to say what I want them to. Newsweek, what I want to say. View, what I want to say. So again, these people are going to be prophetic outlets for God, according to this guy, Kim Clement. He says, Trump shall become a trumpet, says the Lord. Trump shall become a trumpet. I'll raise up Trump to become a trumpet, and Bill Gates to open the gate of a financial realm for the church. Right. And then he says, and God said, I will not forget 9/11. I don't think God will forget 9/11. I think that the people who are responsible for that will answer to him. People starting with Rudy and others like them, they will answer to God for that. They may not answer to anybody in this lifetime and on this earth, but they will answer to God for 9/11. But he said, I will not forget the gatekeeper who watched over New York. Well, what does that mean? Was there some protective angel over New York on 9/11? Maybe he needs to be fired and replaced if that was the case. I don't know. It shall come to pass that the man that I place in the highest office shall go in whispering my name. But God said that when he enters into the office, he'll be shouting out by the power of the Spirit, for I shall fill him with my Spirit. And when he goes into office, there will be a praying man in the high seat of your land. I think this guy is, if he heard it, he may have not realized that if this is what was being said, that Trump is actually a praying man in terms of P-R-E-Y. He preys on children. He's a predator. He is a praying man in that sense, not in any other sense. And so again, this guy is out there. Listen to the word of the Lord, the word of the Lord. What do we do with false prophets like this? It's disgusting. He is as disgusting as Pete Hegseth. But Trump is putting this out because Trump wants people to see him as this messianic figure. This is all a part of this Q nonsense that is out there as well. He says, I'll put him in office and then I will baptize him with the Holy Spirit and my power, says the Lord of hosts. So we're still waiting for that. And we're still waiting for Gates to open up the financial realm to the church and all the rest of this stuff. What utter nonsense from this guy. By the way, he has a long history of false prophecies. Going back to January of 2004, in Utica, New York, he said that Osama bin Laden would be captured within 35 days, that Easter 2004 would be one of America's greatest Easters, and March 11th, 2004 would mark the beginning of the end of terrorist activities. Okay. Well, none of that happened, right? But notice how he's all focused on current events and politics. He's not focused on Christ at all. And that's what you see from people like him, people from like Hagee, the Zionist in San Antonio. Pre-2008, he had a recession prophecy, declared that there would be no recession. And they had one of the biggest recessions we ever had the next year for 2 years. January 30th, 2005. Multiple claims, including a huge economic breakthrough in August and October of 2005, the greatest harvest of souls in U.S. history during 2005 and 2009, he said, because of a sitting president. None of this happened. No, this guy's like Julie Green. Yeah, Trump is likely not to spark a revival, but he's likely to drive people away from Christ because he wraps himself in these TV evangelists and grifters like Paula White. His ego, his anger, his greed, his pedophilia is on display for everyone to see. Don't talk to me about how this guy is a praying man, like a praying mantis. Yeah, POTUS used to mean president of the United States. Now it means predator, pedophile of the United States. And so contrast that to Lou Holtz. Contrast that to who, even though he was successful in what he was doing, that was not the key thing he was about. Whenever he got a chance to speak, he would always talk about God and the joy in following God. And then you have this story of a Christian missionary pilot who is delivering medical supplies in South Sudan. And as he's in mid-flight, he and his co-pilot hear this disturbance in the back, and there was a stowaway. And he runs up and he's got a gun, and he shows them, he pulls the clip out, shows them that it's loaded, and then chambers around and everything, points it at their head. Said, you're going to fly this plane to Chad. And so the pilot starts trying to calm him down and slows the plane down, trying to buy time, and starts going in circles. The guy doesn't know that he's going in circles. And so he decides he's going to start talking to him about his life and about Christ. So he asked him about his family. And the guy broke down and started crying, said they're all dead. And that was kind of an opening for him. And so he started talking to him about the gospel. And he talked the guy down. And then they were able to land the plane. And then after they arrested the guy, and they had him in custody, the pilot and the co-pilot went in and prayed with him. That's what Christians are focused on. These clowns, these grifting clowns like this guy who's out there, what they're focused on is audience and money.
And this
it's
is
disgusting to see what they do.
Yeah, it's truly is disgusting to see what they turn the name of Jesus into.
That's right. That's right.
Simply a tool for them to generate more money for themselves.
Yeah. The love of money is the root of all evil. You get these people who all they want to talk about is Israel and politics and the economy and making false predictions about that and telling people that this war is a holy war. You should wholly ignore them. They're liars. They're false prophets. They have nothing to do with Christianity. They have nothing to do with Christ.
How many
Probably
of
don't
these,
even know him.
How many of these pastors would be in with the money changers that Jesus
right.
drove out of the temple at that time?
It's such a shame to see this, because you look at these secular news outlets, and as they're looking at Pete Hegseth and they're looking at Trump and how they're pushing themselves and presenting themselves as these holy crusaders and messianic figures and everything, this is what so many people think Christianity is. You know, Christianity is not the TV evangelist. It's not Paula White and the prosperity gospel of these people. It's not that at all. That has nothing to do with it. It is such a delusion. It is such a tragedy to see the blind leading the blind. We'll take a break and we'll be right back, folks.
Analyzing the globalists' next move. And now, the David Knight Show.
Whether you're feeling like the blues or bluegrass, APS Radio has you covered. Check out a wide variety of channels on our app at apsradio.com.
Well, I just wanted to catch up on some emails here, and I make a correction about what I said about Catherine Austin Fitts yesterday in terms of I gave out an email address which apparently does not belong to her, and I'll get into that. But first, I want to tell people that Scott Schara's book, we talked about this on Friday, his book releases today. The book is Government Legally Killing Us? And again, you can find that on Amazon. You can also find links to it at ouramazinggrace.com, which is his website. I think, is it .com or is it .net? I can't remember. Anyway, check that. Travis, let me know.
I just pulled it up using ouramazinggrace.com.
.com. Okay, good. Well, in terms of connecting to people, remember that Catherine Austin Fitts has Solari. That's like solar with an I at the end of it. Solari.com is where you'll find her work. And she does excellent work. She's got an excellent publication that's there. And everything that I read yesterday sounded like it was Catherine Austin Fitts, but I don't think it was. As a matter of fact, I had John Kay send this to me. He noticed this. He said, I missed out on the account featuring Catherine Austin Fitts that I sussed it out rather, that you mentioned on the show today. I think it's a fake account that is doing phishing because, again, it put out an email address. And Catherine Austin Fitts usually directs people to Solari.com, and he points out they don't have anything on their profile about Solari. And that is what her Twitter handle is, as a matter of fact. And he said when he quoted that, he repeated that site and sent it to Catherine Austin Fitts to try to get her attention. He said that other site that is pretending to be Catherine Austin Fitts blocked him. So it does look like it is some kind of a phishing attack. So beware of that. Somebody has also set up like a libertarian account on Twitter as well to make people think that it's me. Actually fooled Karen one day. She caught on to it. But it was like Libertarian 99 or something like that.
Yeah, this is a very common thing that happens. They create an account and they duplicate, everything about it. They take the pictures and copy the way the person speaks.
That's right. And what they talk about. And Catherine Austin Fitts has talked about this grift that is coming up and the great taking. And that's what that post was about. And everything in the post was true. As a matter of fact, this is something that happened on Friday. And here is the mainstream media talking about what happened with BlackRock.
The first time from one of its flagship private credit funds. Withdrawal requests from the firm's $26 billion HPS corporate lending fund total $1.2 billion in the first quarter. That is more than 9% of the fund's net asset value. This is the first time in the fund's 4-year history that withdrawal requests topped 5%. BlackRock said it would pay out $620 million as part of the quarterly redemption, the 5% threshold at which managers can restrict withdrawals. Look, no one's calling a crisis in this area yet. It is just very interesting that an area of the market which was so unbelievably hot the last couple of years, and of which people have come through this desk and said to Karen and I, oh, the private market is great. It's great for retail investors. It's great for professional investors. It's amazing the opportunities it will unlock. Where I have to say the question being asked by this desk for those last 2 years was this an area that was starved of capital in the first place? And what is in it for the retail investor when there are so many professionals who know their way around private markets way better than they do as well? But interesting, we're seeing redemptions at more than one fund now potentially building up as well. And as I say, there's been a couple of issues in the private credit market. No one's calling a broader crisis, but it is fascinating looking at this juxtaposed to other things that are going on in the market.
It's those issues.
Well, actually, it is a harbinger of what is to come. As Gerald Cinti has talked about for a long time, the commercial real estate market and the impact that's going to have on the banks that stand behind that. But I imagine there's some exposure in this private credit market as well. It's a harbinger of what the general mood of the world is right now as we look at what is happening with the Trump war. That you got a lot of people who are very concerned and want to get their money out of that area. And it's also a harbinger in terms of Larry Fink, Mr. Co-chair now of the World Economic Forum, and the guy who has pushed the ETFs and this tokenization to the nth degree. And this is what it's going to look like. They're just going to take your money and not give it back to you. And they've already laid the foundation for the great taking in terms of the changes that they made in the UCC code in so many states. And that's the key issue. While we're talking about states and what I said yesterday about daylight savings time, I was puzzled. I thought, what is it that supposedly they have to wait? You got 19 states that say we want to change this constant shifting back and forth. We want to stay on daylight savings time, but we got to get the permission of the federal government. I thought, why do they need that? Where is that in the Constitution? Well, I did some research, and it turns out that there was the daylight savings time comes from the Uniform Time Act of 1966. And this is something that put this under the authority of the Department of Transportation, which kind of makes sense if you look at the way time really was. You know, it used to be that time was pretty much set by the town clock when people would come in. And that created a problem once they got to railroads because they couldn't have every town on a different time schedule. They needed to, in those days, the trains used to kind of run on time, unlike today. Forget about it with Amtrak. You know, it's like, it's more like which day are you going to get there? But it's not a specific time. But they wanted to have a standardization of it. And so it makes sense, I guess, that they would put this in the Department of Transportation. Because it's when you're traveling and taking going a big distance that you would have that there. But they set this up. And so I thought, well, how in the world did Arizona, and it turns out Hawaii, how did they escape this purgatory of daylight savings time that all the rest of us are in? Well, it turns out that as part of that Uniform Time Act, it expressly states may choose to exempt themselves from observing daylight savings time by state law. So these 19 states, Tennessee is one of them, these 19 states that are begging Congress to do something for them and say, as soon as Congress lets us do it, we're going to not change our time. That's only because they want to change to daylight savings time. Somehow that is something that is under the jurisdiction of Congress. You need a congressional act in order to stay on daylight savings time. If you want to stay on standard time, you don't need Congress's permission. This is something we all may need to think about in terms of writing our state representatives. And that's why Arizona and Hawaii are not on it. They decided that they were going to stay on standard time always and never make the change to daylight savings time. It's a strange logic that is involved here. And, when you look at what is happening at the states, most people don't really care what hour it is, more or less. We can all make adjustments. They just don't like the change back and forth. And so the states, if they really wanted to stop this chaos that is going on, they could just opt to stay on standard time, as Arizona did. Strange that we are stuck in this kind of a situation, isn't it? And then we have this from a listener, Robert. He said, some important info on Iran and U.S. history. He said, I normally wouldn't bother you, but since Iran will be big news for some time, I thought this narrative should not be missed. He said, on February the 11th, 2026, demonstrators in Iran burned large statues depicting Baal, or some people say Baal, during state-organized rallies, marking the anniversary of the 1979 Islamic Revolution. And so this is what it looked like. They built this statue of Baal. The event was marked with a clear reference to Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and the issue of Baal worship that appears inside the Epstein files. They also reference Bibi Netanyahu and Israel. At the first demonstrations back in 1979, they burned large statues that depicted Baal, and the term America is the Great Satan, that was when that was first appeared. This was in regards to westernization of their culture by the government, which is a well-known fact. However, what is not well known is what the straw that broke the camel's back with the Iranians, and that was America's export of Planned Parenthood, of contraceptions, of abortion. Just as we did as soon as the dust settled in Afghanistan in 2002, our government was attempting to export child sacrifice to Iran in the mid-1970s, and these people rejected it as well as in other places. So some of our regime change and war efforts have a foundation in the depopulation policies and the Iran issues with the U.S. that have this part of this history will never be talked about. It should remind people of the recent efforts by the first Trump administration to coerce other nations into changing their policies and laws regarding homosexuality and through the State Department. And so this is what it looked like when they burned it. And again, I've talked many times about how Planned Parenthood is really a kind of recreation in spirit of the pagan worship of Ashtaroth and of Moloch and Baal. So you would have the worship of Ashtaroth, which was a fertility goddess, and so they would have these orgies. They would wind up with unwanted children, and then very conveniently they could pass them through the fire of Moloch or Baal, and so they could. That was their path to prosperity, which is one of the ways that Planned Parenthood always deceives women into having an abortion. Do you realize how much this child's going to cost you, right? You should let us destroy that child so that you don't have to pay for that child's upbringing in the future. And then this is from Geesebusters, which I thought was kind of interesting. Flock cameras installed at a church, he says. He said there was a church that on Long Island that he was servicing where they had a building, and they also have a homeschool there. He said, and he sent me the pictures of it. They've got flock cameras all over the place. He said he was helping them for free. And then he saw these flock cameras there and around the school, and he said, I dropped them, essentially stopped doing the service for them after he saw that.
This is not what the Bible meant by, the flock.
That's right. Yes, watch the shepherd the flock for me, shepherd the flock cameras. So, yeah, God is watching over us. We don't need Flock Corporation to do that. IRS Machine Gun, thank you very much for the tip. He said, David, any recommendations on places to purchase storable food? I would suggest that, talking to Jack Lawson at Jack Lawson Books, one of the things he talks about with his civil defense manual that he sells, he said, gradually start accumulating canned goods. And that's a good thing to look at. Now,
also, homesteadproducts.shop does sell some freeze-dried beef, freeze-dried eggs, freeze-dried goat milk. They do sell in smaller packages. This isn't, a giant supply, but you could start purchasing there. Other than that, I don't really know.
I know some of the storable food things that you'll see in terms of I guess it's now the MAGA media that's out there, like Alex and stuff. A lot of that stuff is mostly just starch. So you'd be much better off with the freeze-dried eggs that Travis was just talking about at Home Products. And or just start to accumulate cans and things like that, because cans last a pretty good while. They're not going to last for 25 years, which is some of this other stuff does. But you might want to think about that in terms of something that lasts 25 years.
See, what you do is you just start buying Big Macs. You just keep buying them because they're never going to go bad. You fill up your basement with Big Macs.
That's right. There's that museum where they've got one. They've opened up the fries and the hamburger. And they look the same. They look like they're plasticized, right? No bacteria wants to eat this. No bugs want to eat this. And so if you get something that's going to last for a really long time, you may want to question that. You do want to get some good food. Again, go to Home Products and you can find some stuff there that is the stuff that you can always eat, and you should cycle through it and get good, healthy, clean food like that. And also just gradually start accumulating cans. That'd be a good thing to do. As a matter of fact, I didn't get to it today, but you need to keep in mind the fact that...
Hello, everybody. My name is Joshua Doherty, a.k.a. Joshua Lloyd Fox. I'm an author. I'm a veteran. I'm a dad of a veteran. I worked for the U.S. government and the DoD for 28 years, and I don't want to get on here and be an alarmist, but some of the things that I've seen lately, especially in the escalation of the war with Iran, has me really worried. So currently, I'm sitting not even a mile from Tinker Air Force Base. I work for Boeing currently, and the E-6B Mercury aircraft is headquartered here for the U.S. Navy. It's a Navy aircraft, but they put them on Air Force bases. I also worked E-6B at Pax River Naval Air Station in Maryland. And if for those of you that don't know, the E-6B Mercury is called the Doomsday plane. Its entire operational capability is creating a basically a radio antenna that can send very low frequency radio signals to nuclear submarines underwater, up to a mile underwater. And in the sudden case of nuclear escalation, the E-6's only job is to assure that it can give launch commands to submarines. And they just sent at least one, if not two, E-6Bs over to the Middle East. I don't believe the E-6B has been out of the continental United States since 9/11. And if it is in the theater of war in the Middle East, that means that nuclear escalation is on the table.
That's right. It's on the table. And Caroline Levitt has even said that. We don't take anything off the table. And so when you look at this, there's also a story about the people that sell very high-end bunker storages. I said we had gotten a lot of calls from people in the Middle East, and they said, but unfortunately, if the Americans want to kill you, these bunkers aren't going to do it. But still, a lot of people are getting it. And he said there's two officials in the Trump cabinet that have him working on these things right now. They have gone, their business has gone up by a factor of 25 times the amount of business that they had on a monthly basis a year ago. So yeah, prepare. Thank you for joining us. What do we got here? Geese Busters. Oh, thank you very much, Geese Busters. Appreciate it. Thank you. And I appreciate that. And thank you. Don't frag me, bro. That's very generous. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. That's a very kind comment. I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us, folks, and thank you for the support. Really do appreciate that. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.